This week's episode of The Totally Rad Show is brought to you by Dolby headphone technology,
Crisis Warhead,
and Netflix.
Dan?
Nothing better to do, get abducted by the crew of the Starship Alpha 2. They're from the planet Q, which, due to a space-time loop, is stuck in 82 and must be rescued. They need our heroes to discuss the latest news and give their reviews of games and movies too. Sure hope you're not confused. We swear this is all true, not just the premise too. The Totally Rad Show.
Totally Rad Show, Totally Rad, Totally Rad Show, Totally Rad, Totally Rad Show, Totally Rad, Totally Rad Show, Totally Rad Show.
Hey everybody, welcome to The Totally Rad Show, episode number 78. I'm Alex Albrecht.
I'm Jeff Canada.
I'm Dan Trachtenberg.
The Totally Rad Show is your weekly dose of all things rad. Like a dark Jedi, we grab all the rad things in the world and slam them into your face. We got a great show. As you can tell,
big show.
I didn't know that Dan was actually the
Dark
lead.
Jedi.
Yeah.
The lead.
It's the Dan Unleashed.
The Dan Unleashed by Kevin Dixon actually was great.
Yeah, awesome. We got actually a lot of really awesome Star Wars The Force Unleashed backgrounds.
Yeah.
But Dan as the apprentice,
Yes.
it kind of wins.
That win beyond win.
But
And-
that's just a promo material.
Promo
you
material
did all
for
the
instance-
mocap stuff?
I did.
Not many people know that?
Yeah.
You
I don't like to talk about it.
Oh, that's good. You sound exactly
right
like
now.
him, which is great. I feel like I'm back in the game.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, we have a humongous show, possibly one of our biggest packed shows ever.
Yes.
We have the next Coen brother movie. We have one of the, if not the most expensive video game of all time, Force Unleashed, as well as one of the, if not the most anticipated video game of all time, Spore. We have the new Alan Ball TV series, True Blood, and the new J.J. Abrams TV series, Fringe. Huge show.
All that and crickets.
I love it.
And bags of chips.
Really?
Wow.
Let's get into it.
Last year in movies, our collective movie of the year
The TRS
was
raddest movie of the year.
the Coen Brothers' No Country for Old Men, and the Academy Awards gave No Country for Old Men Best Picture, and
You
the
notice,
directors.
you notice who awarded it first, though? Set the trend.
Oh, I
Yes,
noticed that.
we
I
did
noticed
start
that.
it.
Well, this week in movies, we are talking about the Coen Brothers' next movie called Burn After Reading. It is about John Malkovich, who plays a CIA analyst who gets fired, and Frances McDormand and Brad Pitt work at a gym and may have found some sensitive CIA materials.
And there's lots of other people: Tilda Swinton, George Clooney, others, J.K. Simmons,
Richard Jenkins.
The Hammer.
I love Richard Jenkins.
Sledgehammer.
Sledgehammer, David
Richard
Rash.
Jenkins.
Yeah. What did you think of it, Jeff?
If there's any doubt for this audience, our audience, of what kind of movies I like, this is they, because this is the kind of movie that I adore. Quirky, interesting characters, doing unpredictable things, stuff we have never seen on camera before. You know, the situations and approaches to situations that are completely original and funny and quirky. I love the Coen brothers. I really think that they may be my favorite writing directing team working right now. Mario Brothers are up there. But you know, where No Country for Old Men is a movie that, like you said, blew us all away, blew me away. This is a completely different kind of movie, and it's so cool to see how they can do both. This is much more the Fargo. What's the word?
Simple?
No. Bowling. Big Lebowski, one of my favorite movies of all time. Much more that kind of people in over their heads, violence springing out of nowhere, but to almost comedic and jarring effect. I really liked this movie, and
You didn't say love.
well, I say love too much.
Okay.
There's no such thing as too much love. The world needs love. Thank you.
All you need
for
is
asking.
love.
I need a couple other things. Food, sleep. Love gets up there, though. Yeah, I also really enjoyed this movie. I think overall, really, really funny. I love when the Coen brothers get to go and kind of do that quirky, you know, like you were saying, Big Lebowski-esque, Fargo-esque kind of movie. It ends a little jarringly for me, but I think that was good of it to do. The last scene is probably one of the funniest scenes I've ever seen in a movie. I mean, it was just brilliantly funny. You know, my only one gripe about it is, and I'm gonna, you know, caveat this with saying I really like Brad Pitt. I think Brad Pitt is a very, very talented actor. I like almost everything that he's in. And when I don't like something he's in, it's not because of him. That said, I don't think he's a broad comic actor. I just don't think so. I found him totally unfunny. His whole rector was like, wow, why would they cast Brad Pitt as that? And it's the same way as I felt when he did his guest star recurring on Friends back in the day. It just felt like he was just completely outclassed in the movie. And again, I say this without being, I'm not a Brad Pitt hater. Brad Pitt is awesome. He's a great guy. And I think when he plays a serious role in funny situations, which is what he basically did in 12 Monkeys and Snatch, those roles were completely serious for the world that they were in. The world was funny. That's not what he was the real wacky character in this world that was filled with other wacky characters, but they all pull it off. You know what I mean? So that was my one gripe. But overall, extremely enjoyable, laughing out loud a lot of times.
Danny?
Great.
Cool. I actually didn't like the movie that much.
Really?
The caveat is I am the Blood Simple, No Country, Miller's Crossing, Man Who Wasn't There, Coen Brothers guy. I am not the Big Lebowski. I notoriously don't like, given it many shots.
Well then,
Unbelievable.
I can see why you wouldn't like
Right.
this movie.
I didn't like Big Lebowski that much, and Raising Arizona I like, but I don't love like these other movies. This is not the Coen Brothers that I love. I felt that the movie was sort of like just an extended short film. It felt like a non-science fiction Twilight Zone episode. And
Wow,
I just
How do you make a non-science fiction Twilight Zone?
like it just
You should see Burn After Reading.
exactly. It really just didn't. It was just absurd people doing absurd things, and I couldn't find any sort of way to relate to. I got nothing out of it. I'm convinced that it was purposefully about nothing, like about how
Yeah.
you know, but. I couldn't extract anything. I couldn't get anything out of the viewing experience. One interesting thing I would like to say about it, though, is that they almost always, they started out using Barry Sonnenfeld, the director, as their director of photography. They even notoriously have made some porno films before features with Barry Sonnenfeld. But then after that,
awesome.
They,
Wow.
yeah. But then
Just
after
to get
that,
their foot wet.
they almost exclusively use
Not touching
what's his
that.
name, Roger Deakins, who and they didn't use him on this film yet. They use Emmanuel Lubezki, who did Children of Men and Alfonso Cuarón's movies. Anyway, I found this cinematography to be strikingly them. And I thought that it was interesting that even using a new cinematographer, it still felt the way their movies look.
Yeah.
So I thought that said a lot about them as directors.
It's interesting.
Anyway.
That said, you didn't like the film.
That's I mean,
It's so wonderful how each character, we know so much about every single character, even characters that are on for only one minor, tiny little scene. We get some unique thing about them that sets them apart, and there's no generic characters in this movie, or any of their movies.
They definitely do well. Unique characters and the world of the movie is fully realized, and it's a unique vision. Anyway,
dude, Malkovich too. Malkovich.
Yeah, you forget how good he is.
Or Malkovich,
You forget how
I don't pronounce the age.
he's like on his A game in this movie.
Dude.
And you forget how awesome that guy is.
Yeah, him, and it's chock full of great.
Yeah.
So I also want to bring up briefly. There was news this week of the new Terminator Salvation. A while ago, around when the trailer was released, they mentioned this guy Roland Kittinger as playing the T-800, another Australian bodybuilder type dude. Well, now there's this.
Right. You used the international symbol for bodybuilding twice in this episode already.
That's
he wants to pump iron. That's what it is.
That's how I roll. So there's images of Arnold Schwarzenegger hanging out on set, and I think the story broke on Latino Review, but I'm not sure, about someone had wrote in saying they work for Warner Brothers, and Arnold was on set because he is doing some ADR work, and they are apparently scanning his face onto potentially the body of this Roland Kittinger guy. And ILM is doing the effects, the same guys that are doing the Avatar movie.
So the idea is like Christopher Lee on the sword fighting in episode 2.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Except hopefully not as much sword fighting.
I didn't. No. I mean, I think Titanic had that stunt double.
Well, that
a
was
lot of movies have used that.
worst thing in Titanic.
The
It was like
Crow.
this. Leonardo DiCaprio find him, and there's like a girl running.
I remember
I was like, what? Did that just happen in this time?
But The Crow.
It was the most expensive movie ever made.
The Crow took Brandon Lee's face and put it on his stunt double's body.
Yeah, but it was just like one
And
little thing that he
Jurassic
was, like,
Park
going through.
also had that moment with the girl.
Every movie you've mentioned is 15 years old. I hope that, I mean, it's
And Blue Crush, horrible. Now, that's the interesting thing, is that in that Tron 2 footage, they did take Jeff Bridges' face and put it on. The problem is, I bought that because it's inside a computer.
That's the only reason why I bought it.
Yeah.
It's very clearly computer people.
Here's the question. Is the T-800 a major character in this film? Or is there going to be a scene where you sweep over and there's rows and rows of Arnolds looking younger than he is now?
I think that's
if that's the
probably more
question,
like
then
who cares?
That's awesome and it's cool and that, but
I don't think
it's going to be Arnold running around having dialogue on somebody else's body. I really don't.
I agree with you. I think it's probably a one or two quick shots.
It doesn't make sense for. I mean,
just have him, yeah. You know what I mean, like, so what? He's old, whatever.
Although, yeah, I mean, it makes sense because you feel like he doesn't want to fucking make another Terminator movie. He would show up and do ADR one day and lend his face, but he wouldn't,
Yeah, but one day of ADR
it also
does
doesn't
not
make
make
sense
a major
for it to look
character in
ridiculous.
the movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're not reading 70 pages of dialogue in one day of ADR.
It's just going to be weird when the T-800 is like, vote yes on Proposition 4.
Well,
That's a computer thing now.
Video
Okay, we have 2 giant games in video games this week, but before we start, I just want to really quickly say I've been playing the retail version of 2 Human, which I famously was the one on our show that did not like.
Yeah.
And I've been playing a lot of co-op with my buddy David Ellis from 1UP, and I'm liking the game a lot more now. So still very problematic game.
Apology accepted.
Nice.
Okay.
2 human things here.
I just wanted to point that out because, you know, the opinions change from it.
Yeah,
I think
it
the
happens.
preview build was very different than the retail build. Anyway.
That's why it was a preview.
Yes. So, The Force Unleashed is the big, huge LucasArts game where you play as the apprentice. It takes place between Episode 3 and Episode 4 of Star Wars. And basically the idea behind the game is that you can use Force powers to a much larger extent than you've been able to use in any previous Star Wars game. Their idea was to literally unleash the Force, and they incorporate a bunch of new technology to allow you to do that. And a lot of it is physics-based, and we've talked about it before on the show, so I don't need to rehash what that is, but suffice it to say, it's pretty impressive as far as what you can do. Pick things up, throw them, things behave in ways that are unique to the material they're created with. So it's trying to create a much more interactive world where you can really F things up to a much larger extent. Now, I'd like to discuss this game in 2 ways. First of all, the game, and then maybe when we're done talking about the game, we can have a spoiler cam discussion of the story, because I think the story is really interesting for Star Wars fans. So, Dan?
Okay.
I know you've been itching to talk about this one.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, without getting into any spoilers, the first thing I want to say for people that have just watched a movie segment, I think this is one of the this is better than any of the Star Wars prequels, story-wise. I think if you like Star Wars and were disappointed in the prequels, if you don't play video games, go over to your buddy's house who's beaten the game and you can watch the cinematics, whatever you have to do, see this game. I didn't see the Clone Wars, but I anticipate this is a much better way to get your Star Wars fix this summer than the Clone Wars or this fall. The story blew me away.
We'll talk about the story in a second. What's the...
So, and the game is a lot of fun. It looked great. Often glitchy. For some weird reason, there was a lot of like, I don't know.
Screen tearing?
Something was going on.
Yeah,
like where like I'd be like sliding down a hill and then all of a sudden it would like load me into the next.
The frame rate is not solid.
So it's weird for a most expensive game of all time. But
and we played on the 360.
All the Force powers, tons of fun. I really enjoyed it beginning to end, and this is going to sound weird when I talk about Spore. I'm going to sound like I'm fighting my own argument. But they gave you all the Force powers in the beginning of the game, and I think purposefully they say you can use all the powers at the beginning. Yet I feel like I may have, interestingly enough, enjoyed it more if I had sort of only 2 powers in the beginning, and the powers were carrots on sticks.
You level them up.
You
as
level them up,
but
the game gets harder, so the leveling up just equals the onslaught of enemies. It doesn't give me any. The combos weren't. You know, leveling up combos where I could do new things. I didn't feel like I was doing enough new things. It was just.
Did you like the game?
I love the game, yeah. Had a couple issues with the glitchy stuff. Not so much the screen, the slowdown, not so much slowdown stuff, but I had one thing where I died and it actually put me further in the game. Like, I was trying to pass something and I think as getting killed, like, got thrown through a save point because I woke up and I was like, why are there Rancors now? I was like, I need to kill 4. Who knew? This never told me. So there were a couple little things like that, and there were a few little AI glitches where if you can really, I mean, you know, there were a couple times where I'd like hide behind a rock and just hold block, and somehow the ATST didn't realize that it should move around because I killed it just defensively. Little things like that, but I mean, you know, that's games playing. But overall, one of the best games I've played in a very long time. I mean, without getting into the story stuff, that to me, the story and the voice acting is what really makes this game transcend. I mean, this is all the shit that you wished you could do in all the other Star Wars movies or Star Wars games. I actually disagree with you. I think the fact that the first thing you do is walk into this game as the biggest badassy guy ever makes you go, I am in like Flynn. In like Flynn. And the fact that it's not you makes sense to me. That makes sense to me. It's like I want to be that guy that I was able to play before. You know what I mean? So I had a blast.
Yeah.
I'm not done with it yet because this week involved Spore.
So spoilers.
Yeah.
I'm very close to being done, so I'm sort of not excited about the spoiler cam section.
Oh, well, I agree with
the spoiler.
I agree with both of you that you know what you could nitpick this game a little bit for frame rate, the fact that all the enemy bodies disappear, which feels so last gen to me.
Oh wow, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, I mean, and there are glitches, there are serious screen tearing problems, things that a game review site might take it apart for. But the experience of playing this game, for anybody that watches this show, which if you watch this show, chances are you are a Star Wars freak anyway, like us. It is, like you said, what you've always wanted a Star Wars game to be. It is really fun, and there's such a variety of enemies that you get to deal with, and such Star Wars-centric things that you get to do. There are a couple of sequences that are stupid, I thought, like bringing down the Star Destroyer, which is
I liked it.
really? I hated that sequence. Ugh. But for the most part, the core gameplay element of just kicking all kinds of ass is so much fun. The customization stuff where you get to the first time I got to change the color of my lightsaber, I was like, oh, you know?
Star Wars Galaxies.
Well, yes, but you know, in this game, which looks
great.
so much nicer than
But did you feel that the different attributes of the lightsaber?
I did.
Yeah,
I did.
yeah.
Use that. I got the power. I got the one that had the electricity chance on hit to do the electric damage, which, by the way, stuns everybody. So without doing my electric combo, I would randomly stun, and even bosses. Like I would randomly stun like big, garbage guys or like the Rancors and stuff. And you're like, oh. That is useful, you know what I mean? I put the defensive crystal in when I was going to do a lot of
I didn't level
stuff.
up my reflect laser fire thing, but I had the crystal that did it, so.
Oh, interesting.
Anyway, so let's spoiler cam up, and just for real quick.
Without too much
spoiler.
I want to finish this game when I get up.
Okay, well, we don't have to talk about the end, but
Middle twisties?
I felt like, you say this is the greatest, I don't know how I feel about it because I felt like it nerfed Vader. The nerfing of Vader that started in the prequels is complete in this game. The idea that
nerfing of Vader? What do you mean?
The idea that Vader started the rebellion is a huge and this is supposed to be in canon game. Mm-hmm. So the idea that the rebellion was started because Darth Vader already was planning to overthrow the Emperor way back before Luke ever met Obi-Wan.
Right.
But it was I think it extended what was in the original trilogy.
The rebels were already
No. He by him taking this apprentice.
Right.
That's brilliant. Goddamn brilliant story. By him taking on this apprentice and then killing we're spoilers. So by him taking on the apprentice and then killing him so that the Emperor doesn't suspect anything.
Right.
And then rebuilding him the way he was rebuilt. He then sends the apprentice to go befriend the rebels.
Right.
To found a rebel alliance.
To find which in doing so finds the rebel alliance.
The rebels,
Well, it was forming, but this basically his apprentice that he made go to the dark side.
Was
dark
catalyst.
breeded light. You know what I mean? Dark and
because he was already planning to overthrow the Emperor.
But now this guy that is in but now that
what
this
is that
apprentice
nerfing? That just makes him more of a badass.
No, it makes him good the whole time. He was good the whole time.
No, he's not good. He was trying. He's trying to overthrow the Emperor so he could be the Emperor. He's trying to overthrow it so that he could have flowers and chicken.
He's trying to kill Princess Leia. I mean, not Leia, but her dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not good. There's nothing good about destroying Alderaan.
I felt like the fact that you
the
kick
fact that we
his
see
ass.
the Death Star in this game in its initial stages. Anyway, that this guy, and then he sends him to be friends, and then he actually becomes friends with the rebels, and he sees the good, and then it's such the perfect game. It's the perfect, and then the fact that
I love
he's
the story.
not
to me,
yet
it was the best story of any of the Star Wars games ever, and I've played pretty much all of them.
Yeah.
And the
Well, I agree with
movies,
that.
I mean, this
Yeah.
might be better than.
Oh, I agree. Any
It's
of
the first
prequels, you
in
kidding me?
canon. Anyway,
The fact
we
that
need to move on to Spore.
Midichlorians didn't even
I
pop
think
up.
it's as good a
Happy
story
me.
as any of the original trilogy. It's as
Agreed.
good as Star Wars stories, those. It could have been episode 0.5 or whatever,
3.5.
3.5. Yes.
Okay. Spore.
Gravy.
If you have somehow been
Under some sort of
living
rock.
yes, for the
in-
past 2 years and don't know what Spore is, it's the mind-bogglingly ambitious project from Will Wright, creator of The Sims and SimCity and a lot of other games, sim games. And basically the idea is you start as a single-cell organism and you evolve into intergalactic conquest. 5 stages of development and ostensibly 5 different games. So it's going to be basically us reviewing 5 games in one.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. So we
Theoretically.
talked already about the creature creator a little bit, but that's a big part of it is the technology of creating your creature. Now we have our hands on the game, and I know you were very concerned that the game was not going to live up to the technology.
Well, my concern wasn't that it wasn't going to live up to the technology. My concern was that it was just going to be an RTS, and it's an RTS. I mean,
Well-
it's
2/5 of it is.
well, yeah, but okay, so it's flow for about 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Then it's basically a nerfed RTS where you just walk around as a tribe and you can kind of get like one guy and then go do stuff. But really, that's just like.
That's not an RTS. It's trying to be an action game, third-person action game.
Wow, well, it was the most boring action game I've ever played. But the funny thing was that was my favorite part of the entire game.
The creature phase.
The creature phase when you're on land, because I was like, oh, I get it. It's like
I was
you
like,
know,
wow. I actually thought that part was like, wow, interesting.
Well, it's like wow, the first 4 levels.
Right.
But it was like it was fun. It was kind of cool. That was the one time where I was like, oh, this art style is kind of cool. This is that Spore art style. You know what I mean? Yes, you could create everything, but everything so far that I had seen in the game has looked like a Spore creature. Do you know what I mean?
I do.
Theoretically, you could make it look like that giant bike over there. You know what I mean? But it's going to look like a weird conglomeration of like eye over here and teeth. So that stuff was really cool the first time, and then it was like, oh, that's a weird thing that doesn't even look. It's like playing a Muppet game. Then I got to the tribal level, which was, really felt just like I was playing, Warcraft 1 or 2. You know what I mean? Like it was just a very rudimentary, bing. And
Well,
as I've
Warcraft
been,
1 and 2 are not rudimentary, but go ahead.
well, no, but that was the Spore one was a rudimentary.
Yes.
You can make a shack that gives people spears, and then you can run them with the spears. You know what I mean? And that to me was, it was cool. It was sort of cool. It wasn't really all that much fun. As I've gone on record to say, that is not the type of game that I enjoy playing.
Right.
So I didn't enjoy playing that stage. Then I get to the civilization stage, which is just the things that I don't like about RTSs. That is literally an RTS. You know what I mean? It could have been
Okay.
Command and Conquer.
So what about
Spore.
space? Did you?
I didn't actually make it through.
Okay. So was there anything in the game that you did like?
That is
No?
a good question. Yes, I think. I liked the fact that it wasn't just one game mechanic out of the gate and then it kind of grew on that. But I don't think I liked the individual game mechanics well enough to think that made it a good game. So it was like an okay, weird little amoeba game that if it came out on Xbox Live, I would have gone, this is sort of shitty. And then it was this interesting third-person shooter kind of weird thing, but again, if that went out on Xbox Live, I'd be like, I don't see that that's
So you didn't
the
think
fun.
the sum of the parts made it great?
No,
Okay.
not at all.
What did you think, Dan?
Okay. Well, I sit here now on 4 hours sleep
Yes.
because I was up until 5 trying to complete the space stage with one badge to go, and the sun said, "Don't be an idiot, go to bed."
Dan has a son now?
I know.
So, yes.
Little Solaris.
So, and I'm gonna disagree with you, Jeff. I don't think it's ostensibly 5 games. I think the cool thing about Spore is the journey, is the playing. I'm a little this guy that I designed myself, and then I'm a dude, a standing guy that I made myself with other people. That, you know, I looked both your emails up to add my buddies, and I couldn't find I'm not going to say your emails, couldn't find you. I found Jeff's thing, so my thing was downloading his spores that he made, so my world was populated with little Jeff's creations.
Which is a huge element of the game, the
That was kinda
communal,
cool.
the sort of single-player, massively multiplayer game.
The fact that when I eventually get to space, the fact that I was never doing things economically or trading with it. I was just a warrior. So my whole civilization, there was all my design, and every planet that, even when I'm in space, when I land on planets and I see little creatures, that's all the dudes that I made and the houses that I built, and it was just this one. The great thing about the game is this one huge journey that you take. I don't think any individual stage is that incredible at what it does or uniquely fun. It's more, the journey as a whole is a really unique experience in playing a video game.
But now you also really enjoy the RTS
and
stuff.
I'm glad that I got into,
right? Because I mean, you like did the same thing with Civilization.
Yeah, the problem with the game is that it's not.
Which isn't an RTS.
It's not as fun as
Or TTS or whatever the fuck it is.
It's not as. It was never
It's the
as
same style in my mind.
as fun as Civilization. I have a big problem with the space stage. Let me just say this. I don't think this game's that fun. And I was thinking about your quote about Jonathan Blow, how he said World of Warcraft and games like that were unethical. I think this is the worst offender of this. I think this game, all Spore is to me, is carrots on sticks. The entire game is just a giant carrot on sticks.
Get to the next section.
None of what I'm doing, I was never having a delightful time. It's kind of amusing to see the guy, and the fact, like I said, it's interesting that, wow, my whole world is popular with the people that's just so cool that can happen in a game.
Yeah.
But I was never having a good time. Space was the most fun because
There's the most to do.
most action, and I was flying, but there's, you know, so little about playing space. Was like playing World of Warcraft without Thoughtbot or a buddy.
Yeah.
I had no idea. It was, and I had a horrible experience the first third where all I was doing was dying a bajillion times and I wasn't progressing. And then I keyed into some things and I progressed the whole way, and then I had no idea how to progress. I was dying for something like where Civilization, where it says you're this far ahead in a domination victory, you're this far ahead in an economic victory, and you can play, you can see, you know what you have to do to win. There's nothing. I can see that being a good suck, like it's exploring space and you're figuring it out. But it was all it was trying to get those carrots on the sticks till 5 a.m.
Let me just say, I actually agree with you almost 100%, but I don't come out of it, I think, as negatively to the game. I agree with you that what I wanted from Spore was what I felt like he was talking about doing, which was Pac-Man, then Tomb Raider, then StarCraft, then Civilization,
that would've blown
then
my
WoW.
mind.
Right? That each section of this game was as deep as any one game of that series.
Yeah.
Now, what he set out to do wasn't that. And I think that that's too bad for me as the game player. But what he actually achieved doing, and I say he, talking about Will Wright, is he created little sort of bite-sized chunks of each of those genres that someone who isn't us, someone who hasn't played the best of those genres, can absorb and enjoy on a. It's almost like a gateway drug for other types of games.
Yeah.
And I think, did you guys have your girlfriends play it?
No.
The creature creator back.
Yeah. Well, because Amy Jo played it, and she I think experienced it in a completely different way than I did, because she wasn't looking at it like this was all new to her, because she hadn't experienced some of those other types of games. So I think for people that are non-gamers, it's going to be a completely different experience. I also think that what you said about the joy of populating your universe with stuff that you create, I could sit there and play with just creating jets all day long. It is such a robust, amazing, interesting thing. But I think the game, from a critical perspective, they did themselves a disservice by releasing the creature creator early, because the technology is so astonishing with this game. But we already absorbed that. We got that thing.
You don't even look at that.
You're not impressed by it anymore. But it is so astonishing that yes, these guys that you evolved yourself, and it's so wonderful that they force you to go through the game at least the first time from start to finish. These guys you evolved yourself are what are populated. You dress them, you give them clothes, you give them vehicles, and it's a very problematic game. And I hope that as it continues to evolve, no pun intended, that it will be deeper. But I heard someone say the brilliant line, which is, it's not a deep game, it's a broad game.
Well, yeah, but
and I agree with you. It's not fun moment to moment. There are things that are so profoundly fun. And then there's these great, like, transcendent moments where you're playing the creature stage and a spaceship comes over you, and you feel like, oh, there's all this is happening. This thing I haven't gotten to yet is still happening.
And that's you later.
Exactly.
You are cruising by and there's little guys, and you realize I experienced that. I lived through that.
Yeah, but I think I think it's going to be an interesting game to see continue to progress.
yeah, I wish I liked that style of gameplay, because the end game is just that gameplay, and I just, for me, I find that
Well, the
boring as all hell.
end game, the space section, isn't that at all. Space section turns into a completely different game. That is there's much more to
action
do.
in space, because you're actually flying and shooting. It's like Wing Commander.
But it's a shame how it feels unbalanced for most of the game. Like, military does win much better. Anyway, we got to move on. But Spore, interesting.
Spore. All right, so we are back. The summer is over, and it is time for the fall.
New background
TVs.
no one's ever seen.
Oh, yes.
Hello, new background no one's ever seen. The last of the petty cash.
Yes.
So we got two huge shows to talk about. We're going to talk about as many of the new pilots as we can as they sort of come up in order of importance.
Or release.
Or release.
Or whatever the hell.
Or some sort of random order, which you will never know about. So the first TV show that we're going to talk about is Fringe. It's the big new J.J. Abrams show. It's kind of like X-Files with a little bit of Alias and just a little Lost in there for no reason.
Up the pooper.
Up the pooper, a little Lost. So it stars Anna Torv, who is sort of,
This is her big.
yeah, it's sort of
TV
coming out of nowhere. A lot of these shows, actually, there are a couple of the people, Joshua Jackson from Ye Old Dawson's Creek is in it. Lance Reddick, I think it's Reddick. Reddick from The Wire,
Chronicles.
and also Lost.
Yeah.
Anyway, so basically what Fringe is about is there are scientists that the government has hired since way back in the day to study what they call fringe science or pseudoscience. So
Stuff that would be filed in the X-Files.
correct. Or maybe the F-Files is what you call it. So, telekinesis, mind control,
If you happen to be finding yourself in the Twilight Zone, this is stuff that might happen.
theoretically, but they're basing this on all experiments that have taken place in the past historically. So they're really trying to base this on things that could potentially be true. And so we watched the first episode, which I'm actually interested to see what Jeff said. I'm going to go to Dan first, but I want to see what Jeff thinks, because Jeff actually saw the pre-released pilot.
I did.
And then now this episode.
I'm
Yes,
very
compares
interested to
these.
hear that.
If there's some sort of difference.
Very interested to hear
So
that.
Dan, what did you think about the show?
Well, let me just say too, it's J.J. Abrams and Alex Kurtzman, Roberta Orci.
Oh yeah.
So they did his
Mission
past
Impossible.
shows. They did MI3.
Yeah.
What's the last movie J.J. Abrams just did? That everyone.
Cloverfield.
Cloverfield and MI3 Transformers.
Cloverfield.
Not Cloverfield. And they're doing Star Trek with J.J. Abrams.
Transformers?
And they wrote Transformers. Yeah,
Oh,
they are.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So anyway.
They are like these famous action movie writers that now own their own. They're screenwriters that own a production company and are now
Good for them.
producing material from other writers. They're pretty cool guys. Anyway, so Fringe, kind of disappointed in. you know, there are some great moments of gore and effects. A couple interesting story things, hooks that will keep me interested, curious a little bit, but very much disappointed. The problem with the show is that, well, I do find the lead girl interesting.
Yeah.
I think she's a good choice.
Yeah, she's okay.
I'm curious about her.
I'm sure you are.
It's sort of like a bump up from CSI, but a bump down from these other J.J. Abrams shows for me.
Okay.
It's got its own mysteries of the week, and you can tell it's got this grander mystery at hand.
The pattern.
So I'm definitely interested in those things, but overall, the mystery of the week wasn't that fascinating, and I think a show like this is only as good as the characters are interesting,
right,
and the words they say are funny or charismatic, and none of it was. I kind of just wanted to be funnier in a way. I wanted, like, the reason why
It's not a comedy. You know it's not a comedy, right?
This is where he likes his humor.
No.
It's true, actually.
It's certainly not a comedy, but you know, Firefly isn't a comedy, but it's the humor of it's the lines people say, even if it's not funny, if it's badass or whatever it is.
Are you gonna watch next week?
It's captivated. I'm certainly gonna watch next week. I'm gonna watch many weeks because I also feel like it's a show that won't get good until it settles in.
Right.
You know, this was clearly a pilot. Like, it was made as a pilot.
Yeah.
It was more
And I
like a
think
small movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And J.J. Abrams feels like he has nothing to do with this, by the way. He didn't direct the pilot. It's the first pilot of one of his shows that he did.
He co-wrote.
Co-wrote it, but I don't think he's going to have anything to do with the rest of the show. You know, it just feels loose
Name.
thread. Yeah.
What do you think, Jeff?
So yes, you touched on the fact that I I was very excited about this project.
I think everybody was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And saw the non-finished version, and hated it. I mean,
I remember.
Hated.
Yeah.
And told you guys how disappointed I was. Saw the television aired pilot. Surprisingly, not very different from the pre-version that I saw. There are some key differences. Even more surprisingly, I've warmed to it quite a bit. I liked it. Watching it a second time, I liked it much more than watching it the first time.
Right.
And maybe it's because my expectations fell away and I just kind of absorbed it without any preconceived notions.
Right. Well, what
Or with
What's
giant.
different?
A lot of the CG stuff was different,
Right.
and a lot less cheesy, to its
I was
credit.
gonna say the CG stuff was actually really good. The translucent guy.
But even little things like all the readouts and
off.
stuff,
Okay.
all the readouts that they did were all changed and made seem more authentic,
Okay.
which actually has a very big effect on watching
I
the
could
show.
only imagine.
It was also shorter, which I think is key.
I had a feeling it was a 2-hour pilot that got cut down to 1:35.
It was shorter than the one I saw, so I think that helps a lot. You know,
Yeah.
you don't realize how much that helps. But I agree with you. I have concerns. It does feel like so Monster of the Week, which it almost feels antiquated nowadays.
Yeah.
But I like the whole pattern thing, and I have a feeling that they have a kind of a bigger plan for it. So I'm gonna keep watching, and I'm hoping that the next couple of episodes will get a better pace going, and I will like it more.
Pilots are always really hard, and then Dan, you can go.
Yeah.
Pilots are always really hard because you're trying to do so many things at once. You're introducing characters, you're getting people interested in their stories. You also need to have a thing that's happening that week that is your Monster of the Week, but that can't have as much weight as the creation, and it's really hard, I think, to make a show that is clearly setting up the team, because you have to do that without it seeming like you're setting up the team. You know what I mean? So I think it's tough, and that's so I'm excited that you guys are both into it. Did you?
I just want to say real quickly, the pilot was so expository, and I think that the idea for the show is something that
Embedded somewhere later in the series.
Way later. I don't think the pilot was the idea. Whereas Lost, the idea for the show was the pilot. And Alias, the idea for the show is the pilot.
Yeah.
I think the idea for Fringe, what they pitched, is the end of season 1.
Which is
or
actually
whatever.
great.
Did you like it?
So this is what I think.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it a lot. I think all the sort of concerns that you guys had, I parrot here. I was sort of would go back and forth on the lead girl. There were a couple times where I was like, oof, too much, or oh, she's good. That's just exactly what happened in my head. But I really enjoyed the concept. This type of story is my bread and butter. This is the stuff I eat up.
But is that
shit.
a little bit been there, done that for you? Because it felt a little been there, done that for me.
You know what it is? This is, and actually when I twittered that I was watching it, somebody twittered back, this is this generation's X-Files, and I went, I loved the X-Files.
So did I.
want to be able to experience something like the X-Files that's not the X-Files on a weekly basis.
Okay.
So that actually gets me excited. I agree with you. I don't think we're going to see what Fringe is about, and I think that is actually probably, a good symptom of the fact that Lost was so muddled in the middle. You know what I mean? I think that these people now go in going, we got to know what is the thing that's going to happen at the end of the season that's going to make everybody go, holy crap, that's what it's about? You know what I mean?
But there are shows, what was that one, Invasion, that I felt like were that and never got to the end of the season.
But that's because the Lost and
Got
those
canceled
hadn't
before.
made
But I mean,
it to get people to know that it was okay to do that.
Yes, but the
Shield.
9 or the 9 was the
The 9.
Yeah, the 9 was
where
the one.
it felt like everything I'm watching now is just filler in order to get to like the big ball dropping at the end.
Well, that's the balance that they're going to try to have to do, which is the monster of the week with also the potential for this thing. Before we move on, I did want to ask you guys what you thought, because I thought it may have been even a dynamic shift in the way advertising is done on television. The fact that during the ad breaks, they said Fringe will be back in 60 seconds. I never once hit the fast forward button on my player, and I had it recorded.
I knew I could just hit 30-second skip twice.
Well, I don't have that.
My
I don't
brother
have
was
the
stepping that shit up. He was going way beyond
Right.
it.
I knew that was gonna
Isn't that
happen.
the worst?
I knew that was gonna happen, so I just laid it there. I was like, the 60 seconds, whatever. I'll just take
And they were
drinks
all
of my thing, and they
Isn't
were
it weird,
fine.
too? They were
A lot of movie
they were all
trailers.
health trailers.
Alex took it as a challenge. 60 seconds.
Look. But to me,
It was great.
I did another hand symbol.
I see this. It's
Darn
okay.
it.
Hand symbols are great. It's another
Why do I do
horse
these
blowing.
things?
Anything that keeps commercials
But this
alive,
is a
I'm
big
happy
deal
with.
because I think Hollywood has been fighting with DVRs. They've been fighting about it. And how do you fight that problem? I think this is the answer.
Tell me exactly how far I need to skip.
And you know who really started that process was the web.
Well,
the web was the first place where he goes, hey, just give us 15 seconds.
The thing is-
it's worth less of your time to try to jump these than just watch these.
Yeah, but they just did that. It was the pilot with shorter
Right,
and
but
commercial.
what I'm gonna say, right, but
So it's
here's
not
the
gonna
thing.
say see you in 2 minutes.
No. But here's the
See you in
thing.
2 minutes.
Right,
3 minutes.
but wait a minute.
You know
when
who's doing
TiVo
that?
comes out and says, "Hey, advertisers, nobody skipped your ads in this episode," or 15% skipped rather than
Guys,
75,
I think
that might change the way Hollywood actually pays for ads.
I think we're all overlooking how ahead of his time Chuck Woolery was. 2 and 2.
Amazing. Speaking of amazing, Alan Ball. We talked about him last week.
Yes, because we saw his towel head.
We did see his towel head. That seems weird and sexual.
It was.
was weird. It was. Now that I think about it. So Alan Ball's new series for HBO, True Blood, stars Anna Paquin, a bunch of people that you've never seen before. I tried to remember some names of very Slavic. Especially the guys who play Alex, the vampire guy, or whatever his name is. Anyway. True Blood is based on a set of books that I actually didn't know was a set of books until I was talking to a friend of mine. She was like, "Yeah, I love the books." I was like, "Cool, okay." Which again is well, whatever. We'll talk about it in a second. True Blood basically is vampires. A scientist has discovered a way to synthesize blood en masse, and in doing so, caused vampires to basically come out of the shadows and go, "Okay, well now that you guys synthetic blood,
Out of the coffin.
come out of the coffin, right? That's what they call it. Now that you got synthetic blood, we've sort of been here eating you for the last millions of years.
Yeah.
But this synthetic stuff tastes fine. So we're going to be not doing that anymore. And sort of the social repercussions of that, which is a very interesting concept. So it's on HBO. It's an hour-long drama. Jeff, what did you think?
So, 6 Feet Under is one of my favorite series of all time.
Yeah.
Alan Ball, and we went over last week, loved American Beauty. For me, it's The Shield, 6 Feet Under, West Wing. That's it, that's the list. You know? Well, Sopranos is hanging off the edge somewhere there. So I had very high expectations for this show, and I was very disappointed. Very disappointed. Having said that, the only reason that I fell in love with 6 Feet Under is because I watched past the first episode. The first episode of 6 Feet Under, I did not care for. They had weird fake commercials in it. It felt cheesy and off. I didn't like it. And the only reason I kept watching it is because I happened to be watching on a night when they had a marathon of 4 episodes in a row. And I just kept watching, and I got hooked. By the end of the 3rd episode, I was completely hooked for that series. So I have
marathons work.
I have very
With shortened commercial breaks to tell you when the commercial's over.
I'm kind of grasping on to the hope that in the subsequent episodes of the show things will improve, but I found it to be completely unenjoyable. I did not like the characters. I did not like the situations. I found the whole premise to be so cool in concept, but so flat and unbelievable in execution that it seemed it was a thinly veiled metaphor for the gay rights movement, which it could be a really cool concept, but
Interesting.
It seems so on the nose, and like the way people would drop, oh, they just came out of the coffin or something like that. It felt so false to me. I wanted to like it so much more than I ended up doing.
I never made that connection. I just thought it was just sort of a cheesy expression that they threw in. Dan, what did you think?
Well, I've said on the show many times, I am a
Huge vampire lover.
huge Buffy the Vampire Slayer fan.
Yes.
Massive. And
Did you hear what won the Buffy Award this year, by the way?
Oh, I did
The
hear
Shield, the greatest
that.
show
I did hear
ever.
that. And I assume Alan Ball, same experience as Jeff. First pilot of 6 Feet Under, did not like. Second episode, I wanted to watch every single goddamn episode of that show right that second, inject it into me. So, very excited for the show, and I did like it quite a bit. Liked it way more than Fringe. I feel like a lot of ground will be tread that Buffy tread on in using vampires as a metaphor for human struggles. I think Alan Ball has a very unique take on outcasts and minorities, and I'm digging what I'm seeing so far, and I like that it's got that angle on it. And I like that I'm going to be given perspective on those situations that are much more palatable because it's vampires and people, as opposed to a movie like Towelhead, which is dealing literally with those issues. So I'm down, and I feel like I can see where I like the allegorical nature of it, and it's interesting, and I can see myself maybe getting a little bit freaked out at things, not scared, but just a little bit freaked out, and I liked the characters. They were all very strongly drawn characters, and I'm not an Anna Paquin fan, but what I liked about, I guess I just said Firefly and 6 Feet Under, and I said before, funny lines, funny dialogue, whatever, but really it's the combination of people.
Yeah, the interplay.
Joss Whedon has this beautiful line about storytelling, which is you take people, you put them in peril, you see what they're made of. And that's I think is all drama, all high drama is like, I just want to see when all this stuff happens, I want to see that girl and her friend who likes this guy and that and this, you know? I like the soap opera of it.
That's cool. I felt a lot like Fringe. I ultimately enjoyed it. I had problems with it, but I knew it was something that I would enjoy more of. And maybe that's because I really dug the concept. And I also got a little bit of, I don't know if you got any of the hints of the fact that maybe there's a whole fantasy world that exists that vampires are just one of the things that came out.
Yeah.
Like the werewolf stuff that happened and a little bit of her stuff. So that, to me, it's like my 2 buckets of joy.
I don't think that's going to happen.
Science.
I'll put my balls on the table a little bit and say.
I think it is.
Well, I think the dog.
Yeah, was the bartender.
Yeah.
So I
I
think.
thought it was brilliant.
I know. Yes, it was brilliant, and we were. That was like a brilliant sphere. So anyway, what came out of this was 2 shows that have the potential to be great series that I need to watch more of. I'm excited to see more of, but ultimately the process of watching the pilots was not like seeing the first episode of Lost. The first episode of Lost was like,
I completely agree.
that is a show I'm
I completely
watch.
agree.
Yeah.
The first episode, and I was actually going to bring that up myself. The first episode of Lost I'm watching something that is
different and
different and new, and
amazing.
I can't wait to tune into the next episode.
So I feel like they were both successful shows. I'm excited to watch the rest of them, but ultimately it was a week of TV that was just sort of like, oh, that was cool. You know what I mean? So thank you. We'll talk to you later about more stuff.
Excellent.
So before we get to our email, we do want to thank our sponsors. Dolby Headphone Technology is sponsoring us. I have been a fan of Dolby Headphone Technology since they sponsored an episode of Dignation like over a year ago.
I've been a fan of them since then as well.
Right, where they take it's the technology that using any type of headphones or earbuds, they can take the 5.1 signal, the Dolby 5.1 surround signal, and convert it to I don't know, science works it so that your ears, it seems like it's surrounding you. In headphones, you could be, your eye, it's crazy stuff.
It's like that technology for that guy in Star Wars, in Empire. He's got that thing wrapped around his brain.
Yes,
It's like
a black hole.
Right.
The same sort of, any kind of backhead technology. So one of the things that I want to say that's even more exciting than that, which is, how do you get Dolby headphone? You say, I have a PC and I want to be playing or a Mac, I'm going to be playing some video games. I wish this 5.1 was around my headphone. Plantronics, in August at PAX, we were there, we didn't go to the booth, we should have, just released GameCon, I think it's what they call it, GameCon 777, which is a headset that has the Dolby headphone technology built into the headset. So you plug it into the back of your computer, USB, it will convert, it has a little box, a little external sound card, that will convert any 5.1 signal into Dolby headphones. So you can be playing any game that you want. Most of the games since 89 have been released in Dolby 5.1. All right.
On my ad lib.
Yeah, it was a little facetious. I had a Hercules card.
That's a graphics card.
I know, but they also made a sound card. I don't know, I made that up. Anyway, yeah, it was the Turtle Beach. But anyway, so this is crazy stuff. Check out Dolby.com. Check out all this stuff on Dolby headphone. We should do a show on Dolby headphone. I'm gonna call it Dolby guys.
We should do a show in headphones. Is that what you said?
We should be. Hello, welcome to Totally Ratchet. Wow, it's really creepy. I can hear both of you guys really well.
Another sponsor of ours is a really freaking awesome video game coming out called Crisis Warhead. You've probably heard of Crisis, the amazing, epic, graphically mind-blowing PC first-person shooter. Well, there's a new version, Crisis Warhead, which takes that same incredibly visually spectacular game and turns up the action. So now it's not so much about like playing a game of cat and mouse through the jungle, it's about blowing shit up.
I like that.
We like blowing shit up. You can tell there's a theme of the video games that tend to...
sponsor the show.
Yeah, but no, dude, it's coming out in September. It's gonna be amazing, and they're sponsoring our show. I'm very anxious to get my hands on it. We saw it at PAX, but we didn't get a chance to play it.
I know.
So we're very excited
We
to
should
play
have them give us copies.
So make sure that's on your radar, because that game looks really pretty sweet.
I just popped into my head
Netflix sponsorship?
the Coen Brothers movie, I forgot to say, the one that really sums up the kind of movies they make that I don't like is Lady Killers.
That doesn't.
And the one I didn't say.
That's not fair.
Why is
Because
that
Lady Killers is not
an
any
absurd comedy.
Well, but it's not, you say it sums up the movies they don't make that I don't like. It's like the one bad movie they've ever made.
No,
it's not
I
even
thought you liked
anywhere.
it.
It's not the Big Lebowski, and it ain't Fargo, and it ain't the one about the two lawyers.
But Born After Reading and Intolerable Cruelty, which you also like.
I liked a lot.
Yeah.
I didn't like Lady Killers like those. So it sums up the movie. It sums up.
Were you talking about
It
Netflix?
sums up the kind
Were you
of
talking
Coen
about
Brothers movie I
Netflix?
don't like. And the movie that I didn't say that is one of my top 5 favorite movies of all time. If you didn't rent it on Netflix, when I mentioned it back in No Country for Old Men, now is the time to see Miller's Crossing. It is the best
You mentioned that.
gangster movie.
I know you're saying he's doing it again.
Yeah, it's good. Good.
Yeah.
It's good.
It's good. So on Netflix, rent Miller's Crossing, which is just one of the 75,000 titles. I don't know why it hasn't come out on Blu-ray. They really need to come out on Blu-ray, because if they do come out on Blu-ray, you can also rent that on Netflix.
What if I'm not a member of Netflix though, Dan?
Well, if you're not a member, I need to also tell you that they have 40 shipment centers, so when you become a member, you get your movie that you put on your queue, Miller's Crossing, like the next day.
Wow.
Plans start as low as $4.99, and you can get a 2-week free trial if you're not a member. If you go to netflix.com, www.netflix.com/TRS. TRS.
So you can rent, on Netflix, you can rent both Miller's Crossing and The Big Lebowski. Watch them both and decide which Coen Brothers fan you are.
Oh, he means Miller's Crossing and Lady Killers.
No, not
Anyway,
Lady Killers.
before we get to the email, we have finished that part. Let's get to the
left
email.
That's
my
what
wallet in...
All right, here we go. So, I'm gonna try to do this with the screensaver thing on. With the influx of with the influx of comic book movies this summer, it seems that they're finally getting it right. Even looking back at the latest generations of Batman movies, it's great to see that they've come so far. My question, though, is what do you think it will take for game movies to step up to the same level? Is it even possible? Both comics and games have been mentioned as their own form of storytelling, but when it comes to movies, one is definitely coming out better. Any idea as to why? A fan since episode 1, Alicia. Is that it?
Yep. Yeah,
Well,
I thought
Alicia, good question.
Pretty apropos this week, considering we played a video game that everybody thought was
Better
a
than the movies.
cinematic movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's pretty clear problem that movies based, when we have Max Payne movie coming out soon based on a video game, and we had Death Race, which was basically based on a video game.
Well, here's the thing that I think, because you bring up a good point with the Max Payne, because I think Max Payne is probably getting closer to that thing. I think what it's gonna take, unfortunately, is the exact opposite. It's rather than doing stuff to make, video game movies as good as comic book, also Prince of Persia, that could be it. You know what I mean? Making video game movies as good as comic book movies. The reason why comic book movies are the way that they are is because they finally made a movie that the technology was also available to, and cost effectiveness, to be able to do it. May even have been Spider-Man 1, where a movie can make that kind of splash. Then the money will be brought in. I don't think it's gonna be, well, you put the money in and then it'll be successful. I think it's somebody's gotta go out on a limb, make a movie that's based on a video game that is that big summer blockbuster movie. Then all the other video game properties, it's like what we're seeing now with the comic book properties, where it's like the floodgates open and just comic book movies that were very high quality.
I'm missing your point. You're saying that.
My point is, it's not like something that Hollywood is gonna do en masse. It's that one person who's going to do successfully a major movie that is going to be based on a video game that's going to make as much money as Spider-Man did. And then the movie studios will go, oh, it's viable. Then we'll see the big.
Well, I think the reason that is, I think the reason why this is happening with comic books and hasn't happened yet for video games is because comic books are stories.
Well, so are video games.
Comics. My point is that video games are just now becoming stories. The Mario Brothers doesn't have a story. Mortal Kombat doesn't have a story. Those movies were decent budget movies that were summer spectacles that had shitty stories. So they did the box office that kind of movie makes. Batman, Dark Knight, it became so big because yes, it's based on a comic book, and yes, superheroes are big now, but it's a fucking good movie. And that only really good movies make it to the next level. It's not just a moneymaker.
Right, but is that a really good movie because it's based on a comic? That's what I'm saying.
Is it a function of the source material?
Well, I think
what I'm saying is once a video game is made into a really good movie like Dark Knight, then you'll start seeing money and talented people taking on those.
Totally, exactly. That's the point is now the video games are becoming more story-oriented, where BioShock had a much richer story, and now Gore Verbinski might make a BioShock movie, for instance. Then we might get that.
But what is it? You guys are just saying once we get a good movie. Is there a function of the quality of video games that makes them
they're
more
not
difficult?
Story-oriented. They're video games.
Well, no, now they are.
Now they are becoming more story-oriented.
You don't
but
think
as a function, The Force Unleashed based on a movie? Yeah, I mean, yes, and I thought it was a great game, but they're not going to make a movie based on. I'm saying.
You should. It'll be awesome.
I'm saying. Comic books are stories, and they're making movies based on stories. Video games are
just
challenges. They are games. So making a movie out of Doom, it's not. You don't have a good story to make a movie. You don't get an auteur like Christopher Nolan to make that story.
So I think what you're saying
are becoming more story-oriented. I think we might eventually start to see. better directors and better writers drawing from better material.
I just want to say
I think
you
that-
just created a new word, Storiented, which means story-oriented.
Did I say that?
Now this episode has a title. So I think you're making an arbitrary distinction.
Me thing.
I think you're making an arbitrary distinction because in the same way that video games haven't always been as story-oriented as they are now.
Storiented.
Excuse me. Comic books are the same way. If you look at the early comic books, the way that the first Spider-Man movie distilled what Stan Lee wrote in the first Spider-Man story, it did it in a way that it built upon sort of the sum total, the amalgamation of what we know of Spider-Man in the successive 40 years, 60 years, whatever it was. Those one-off stories that were coming out in the 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s are not the same level of quality storytelling that would sustain a film.
No.
They're icon.
The story of the pilot episode of Spider-Man, the story that
But there's
you're a geeky kid who then has superhuman powers is far more captivating than I'm a plumber who jumps on mushrooms.
It's captivating.
Win.
FTW.
There's no contest here.
But we're not talking
about.
about Halo. We're talking about Gears of War. We're talking about.
They haven't made those movies yet, and those are games that.
So you're saying that by the mere function
of saying Halo and Gears of War are. There's no, we don't play those games for the stories. We've already talked about that on the show.
So you're saying that by the mere function. It feels like you're talking out of both sides of your mouth because you're.
It's one of his is not out of his mouth, but
no. Wait, what do you mean?
Because one side of the argument you're saying those movies haven't been made yet, so those stories are worthy, and at the same time you're saying we don't play those games for their stories, so those stories aren't worthy. You're saying that by the function of comic book stories being worthy of being films, that they will inherently be better quality, and I'm saying that that's not necessarily. It's not a function of comic books that their story is inherently better, just by the genre or the media that they come out on.
The medium of comic books
So you guys disagree,
is a storytelling.
Which is fine. You guys can disagree.
The medium of comic books is a storytelling medium.
Correct.
The medium of video games is only now just sort of becoming a storytelling medium.
Genius.
Movies,
Good wrap.
storytelling medium.
Wrap up. Done. Thank you.
Story-oriented.
Alicia, for
Story-oriented.
this lovely email. If you would like to send us an email, please feel free to do so to fans@totallyradshow.com.
TotallyRadShow.com is your destination for finding this background,
Oh my God.
downloading templates for other backgrounds. If you want to send us a background of your own design, send it to fans@totallyradshow.com. If you want to sign up for our forums, discuss this episode, get into this debate, which we did not coherently solve.
Really? I must be like
Bye-bye.
not lucid right
So
now.
go ahead.
We didn't come up with a solution to her question.
TotallyRadShow.com. Dan, do you have anything to add?
Why one is coming out
Dan,
better?
Dan,
I thought I
forget it.
answered.
It's
Okay.
over. We're past that.
Well, the thing about the thing is that on the website that Jeff mentioned, TotallyRadShow.com, you will find the name of the movie we're going to review ahead of time, which you need to go check out because I don't know it right now. Completely forgot to check up on that. So
Are we going to go see a screen? We have a screening for.
Go see it.
Well,
But we're not sure if that's.
no reason to say it now if we're going to be wrong.
We might be wrong because we've been wrong this whole.
But it may just be a
past week.
lunatic you're looking for.
So, if you want to know what we're going to review ahead of time,
That
so
we-
you can check out the movie as well. Go to TotallyRadShow.com. Yes. Follow us on Twitter.
Yes, and follow us on Twitter. Before we follow each other on Twitter, do want you to check out Pop Siren, one of Revision 3's DIY female.
Yeah, if you liked our do-it-yourself doing shirts thing from a couple weeks ago,
Pop Siren.
Pop Siren does similar things, even cooler stuff actually, because we're just
Sure, guys,
idiots.
weird. Also, before we talk about Twitter real quick, I did want to say jinx.com/TotallyRadShow.
Nope.
TRS, love it. /TRS. By the time this episode comes out, the new shirt, the winning shirt
Brad
from our
Dial.
shirt design contest will be available for purchase. So get out there and get yourself a shirt, people. Also, twitter.com/Alex Albrecht, twitter.com/Jeff Canada, twitter.com/DannyTRS, and twitter.com/SteveTRS. You can follow our random ramblings throughout the week.
Also, Jeff, do you want to tell them what they need to do in November?
Thanks, Dan. I was remiss in saying it last week. Dan has a philosophy which states that you need to hear something at least 3 times in order to remember it. So it is my mission to get as many people to register to vote from watching the show as I can. Every single week from now until November, we're going to mention it on the show, and it's going to be in the show notes. All you need to do is go to our show notes on revision3.com or on our website. Click on. It's gonna be register to vote. Click right there. It's gonna take you to an easy way to register to vote. Get out. It is the raddest thing you can possibly do.
Where's it taking them?
Rockthevote.org.
You know, I know it's an already long show, but since we're already in that territory, I would like to say a voting thing that I forever would always excuse when people would say every vote matters. I'd go, but I could easily not go. And it doesn't make a difference. My one vote, it's not gonna make a difference. I can just I can tell people I'm gonna vote, not show up. But here's what quelled that for me, is that if you are a person that does vote,
right,
then you are going to be talking to your friends or whoever and say, hey, I'm going to vote. Oh, and that causes another person. So yes, if you quietly,
so it's the butterfly thing.
I think it's not.
Or the butterfly effect.
Don't your vote. When they say every vote counts, it's not. It's every voter counts, not every vote counts. So I think if you are a person who votes, it sort of creates this. It's in the collective consciousness of going to vote. It's not about, because you're right. Your one vote. If you decide to not go home, as long as you don't tell anyone, it's fine. Nothing will change.
Right.
But if you tell people and they go, oh, if you're not going to vote, you're right, this is pointless.
Yeah, it's the exact
that's
opposite.
detrimental, exactly. Right. So it's about being a voter.
All right.
Not just voting.
Get out there and vote. That is it for this week's edition of the Totally Rad Show. I'm Alex Albright.
I'm Jeff Canada.
I'm Dan Trachtenberg.
Until next time.
What?
Nothing.
What?
Just hang in there. Camera ready? Love it.
Is the camera?
Sorry. You should have said no.
I won't.
Hey, everybody.
Not to talk this time.
Horrible. All right, here we go. Camera ready?
Yes.
Camera ready.
Yes.
All right.
Oh,
Hey.
See, you can't use my joke.
One too many.
I just realized my hood should be up. Yeah.
To the Totally Rad Show.
How was that? That's good.
He pays his tuition by convincing financial institutions that if he didn't have a degree, it would have detrimental effects on the economy.
He is an honorary member of all 153 fraternities in the U.S. He once did a power hour in 7 minutes. In the summers, he interns as the CEO of Deloitte & Touche. When teachers call on him in class, it's usually because they need an answer to another student's question. Chris Lazinski is the coolest college student in the world.
Welcome to my dorm room. Since I have $500 to spare, obviously, and only one unfortunate outlet in my dorm room, I use the iPod gramophone to play my music. It has a timeless, sophisticated design, reminiscent of a porcelain toilet. I snap in my headphones like so, and out flurries a bounty of musical sounds for my fall 2008 chill playlist. It's a Sky Mall product fit only for the coolest college student in the world. That's me! I'm Chris Lazinski, and this was a Revision 3 Back to School Intern Survival Guide brought to you by the Adobe Media Player AMP.
With the Adobe Media Player, you can watch your favorite Revision 3 content and more, all in one place and anytime, anywhere. Go to the URL on the screen to download the free Adobe Media Player. Or, if you've already downloaded the Adobe Media Player, search Revision 3 exclusives and add your favorites today.